The town of Redding, California, woke to an unspeakable horror. A young mother of two had vanished into thin air. Sherri Papini, a 34-year-old woman known for her devotion to her children and picture-perfect suburban life, was gone. Her husband, Keith, found her phone abandoned on a roadside, still playing her favorite music. A strand of her golden hair was tangled in the earbuds. The scene was eerily staged, as if a ghost had snatched her from the earth without a sound. Panic spread like wildfire. The case ignited national headlines. How could a woman disappear during a midday jog in a safe, quiet neighborhood? Theories ran rampant. Human trafficking, a random kidnapping, a serial predator stalking suburban mothers. Keith made emotional TV appearances, pleading with the public to bring his wife home. The world watched, hearts aching, as days turned into weeks. The case gripped America. News outlets broadcast every new update. Missing posters were plastered across highways, gas stations, grocery stores. Volunteers combed the woods. Drone footage scanned the surrounding terrain. The FBI got involved. Still, no trace of Sherri. Keith Papini's face, filled with desperation, became a symbol of the case's anguish. He insisted she would never abandon her children. Not willingly. Then, like a miracle, she came back. On Thanksgiving morning, 22 days after her disappearance, Sherri reappeared 150 miles away, bruised, battered, and bound. Her face was gaunt, her body emaciated, her wrists shackled. A brand had been burned into her shoulder. She sobbed as she told authorities she had been held captive by two Hispanic women who kept her locked in a room, hurt her, starved her. She described their masks, their accents, their cruelty. She had fought to survive and escaped against all odds. The nation exhaled. Her story was horrifying and heroic. She was the woman who survived the unthinkable. But something was wrong. As investigators pored over the case, inconsistencies crept in like shadows at dusk. There were no signs of a kidnapping where she vanished. No tire marks, no DNA, no witnesses. The bindings on her wrists were too neat. The branding was shallow, crudely done. And then came the DNA. Male DNA found on her clothing and more on her body. Not Hispanic women, not unknown captors. A man. When the DNA was tested, the results cracked the case wide open. The match led to a man in Southern California. Not a criminal, not a trafficker. Her ex-boyfriend, James Reyes. When the FBI knocked on his door, he didn't deny it. Sherri had reached out to him months before her disappearance, claiming she was being abused and needed to escape her life. He agreed to help. He drove hundreds of miles to pick her up and hid her in his apartment for weeks. She changed her appearance, ate his food, slept in his bed. There was no abuse, no bondage, no masked women. She faked it all. She branded herself, starved herself, bruised herself, all to return as a survivor. The lie was massive, and it worked, until it didn't. She collected over $30,000 in victim funds, continued receiving disability, and watched the world mourn for her. Her husband, devastated, stood by her until the truth surfaced. When she was finally arrested in 2022, she faced charges of mail fraud and lying to federal agents. What emerged from the case was a disturbing portrait of a woman capable of deception so deep that it fooled law enforcement, her husband, and an entire nation. But the fallout was just beginning. Federal investigators uncovered Sherri's search history, phrases like how to disappear for good and punishment for faking a kidnapping. There were burner phones, secret email accounts, and conflicting stories she'd told to friends and family. When confronted with the evidence, her reaction was chillingly calm. "I just wanted to go away," she said. But why? Sherri's past came under the spotlight. Former acquaintances painted a different picture from the wholesome mother portrayed on television. Rumors of attention-seeking, dishonesty, and past fabrications began to surface. Her ex-husband described her as manipulative. Friends remembered her staging minor dramas to gain sympathy. None of it seemed dangerous, until now. The courtroom was packed during her sentencing. Victims of real kidnappings called her actions disgraceful. Keith Papini filed for divorce just days after the truth broke, stating that the trauma had irreparably shattered his trust. And then came the children. Their mother had told them monsters took her away. They'd spent weeks fearing masked kidnappers were lurking in the shadows. Now they had to unlearn that fear and understand their mother wasn't a hero, but the architect of their nightmares. The judge sentenced Sherri to 18 months in federal prison, calling her actions calculated and manipulative. But even as she stood in court, face tear-streaked, a deeper mystery hovered like fog on a lake. What made her do it? The easy answer was attention. The deeper truth was more elusive. A psychological evaluation suggested narcissistic traits, coupled with a deep need for validation and control. But nothing definitive, until agents went back to James Reyes. In a follow-up interview, he confessed something new. A notebook, kept by Sherri during her stay, was still in his possession. In it, she had written journal entries, sketches, and strange codes. Some entries detailed how she planned to reemerge, what she'd say, how she'd cry on cue. One haunting page read, "If I come back broken, they will love me more." But there was more. Hidden in the back cover was a folded letter. It was cryptic, typed, unsigned. It read, "They'll never find the others. I wasn't the first, I won't be the last. They listened to her too." Who was her? Was it another woman in Sherri's life? Or a fabrication to keep the lie alive? The letter raised more questions than it answered. Investigators reopened old missing person reports connected to Sherri's past. Former friends, distant cousins. Nothing concrete surfaced, but the specter of deeper deception remained. Keith, meanwhile, withdrew from the public eye. He declined interviews, focusing on rebuilding his life with the children. Yet those close to him said he still wonders, did I ever truly know her? The media storm passed, but the scars remained. In Reading, residents spoke of betrayal. Many had poured hours into the search, organized vigils, donated money. For them, it was personal. And somewhere in a federal prison, Sherri Papini now lives in the shadow of the story she wrote. Only now, without the applause. Yet the mystery persists, because on her final day in court, as she was led away in handcuffs, she turned back briefly. Her eyes locked with the journalist who had followed the story from the start. And with the faintest, strangest smile, she mouthed a phrase caught on camera. "Check the river." To this day, no one knows what she meant. But a month later, a hiker near the Sacramento River discovered something buried beneath a pile of rocks, a plastic box sealed tight with duct tape. Inside were dozens of photos, Sherri in different places, a mask, a burner phone, and one final letter. This was never just about me. Subscribe to Dark Case Diaries for Part 2 and for chilling true crime stories like this.